Sex and the City Season 3, Episode 9 is probably the most problematic piece of media to ever air on television. Prove me wrong. Spoiler alert and trigger warnings for people who hurt women. So a little backstory, Carrie's dating this guy named Aiden. It's going really well. It's very healthy. And it's a huge step up from her last relationship with this guy named John, who was a trauma bond. He strung her along, told her lies, said he would never get married, and then they break up, and then he ends up married like that. So now she's with Aiden, things are going well, very healthy, she's adjusting. But John decides he's not happy in his marriage, and maybe Carrie's the reason why. Even though Carrie is just trying to live her life, you know? So he's telling Carrie that he needs to see her because he's unhappy in his marriage. And Carrie is just kind of like, I don't really want to see him. But eventually, Carrie decides to go to a hotel because Aiden's doing work in her apartment that's making it difficult for her to concentrate. So Carrie goes to this hotel and John finds out that she's at this hotel, and this is where we get into the trigger warning part. So they decide to go to the hotel bar together, and John is struggling to get out the words he needs to say because of course. And Carrie's like, well, I'm just gonna leave. And she gets up and she walks away, and I'm pretty sure she tells him not to follow her, but he does so anyway. And then she starts to get on the elevator and John starts to follow her, and she's like, don't you get on this elevator with me? And John doesn't care. He gets on the elevator anyway. And then John starts kissing Carrie without her permission, and Carrie pushes him off and is like, F you, get away from me. But John doesn't care. So a second time he starts kissing Carrie without consent. And a second time she pushes him off and is like, F you, get away from me. And then a third time John starts kissing Carrie without consent, and eventually Carrie, quote unquote, gives in. And then they end the episode showing that they did the do. I need y'all to understand that that elevator scene is not played up as like this super problematic behavior and a lack of consent. It's played up like this is hot, this is spicy, and maybe even this is romantic because Carrie and John ended up together at the end of the series. And as somebody who's having to learn how to reframe relationships after going through the ringer with a lot of stuff in my life, media like this that portrays relationship dynamics like that in a sexy, spicy way are way more problematic than people like to talk about. The cultural impact of shows like Sex and the City and how we talk about sex, how we talk about relationships, how we talk about parenthood. We have these conversations about the cultural impact of this show. But when it comes to having conversations about how it was problematic with episodes like that, or talking about how it was problematic to its jokes about Black people and its jokes about the gay community and its jokes about anybody that wasn't a white woman, it's played off as like, oh, it's just a product of its time. But people want to hold on to the cultural impact of how it was so forward thinking as it regards relationships and sex. And I just feel like people can't have it both ways. Y'all need to really look at this show fully for what it was, the good and the bad.